All right, I found a really very interesting article. It's called Who Are the Creationists Kidding on Abiogenesis? Exciting breakthrough in abiogenesis. Here the hereditary carrier replicates automatically, creating two separate entities. This shows life can potentially come from non-life. The matter of the ultimate origin of life, the theory of abiogenesis, which is often erroneously conflated with the theory of evolution, has been problematical for years. What is sought is a basic explanation for how fundamentally non-living matter could acquire the properties and attributes of life, including being able to reproduce. In principle, this isn't that remarkable a stretch, since we already know there exist living entities at the margins, the viruses, which display no attributes of life until they become attached to a host. Once in a host, they can appropriate its cell machinery to churn out billions of copies of themselves. All of this, of course, can be done without supernatural agency. Alas, creationist Ken Ham's answers in Genesis is unable to swallow this, and moreover is still upset that Neil deGrasse Tyson dared suggest life on Earth started without the help of God. Tyson in one Cosmo episode honestly stated that the very origins of life are not yet understood, because abiogenesis is yet to turn up any verifiable results. Not that they have claimed any are verifiable. Answers in Genesis is calling the evidence of a clear fall. But what's clear is that Tyson isn't just a threat to creationists. Their big target is the reputation of science. Answers in Genesis, for example, continues in attempts to discredit the science, saying abiogenesis has never been observed in experimental biology and violates the most fundamental law in biology, the law of biogenesis. Nevertheless, the authors of the review are confident there was a naturalistic chemical origin of life. Biogenesis is a natural law that life comes from reproduction by living things. However, in a remarkable find published in the New Scientist, Volume 209, number 2794, page 11, two investigators, Kaneko and Atsushimi Karumura, have made a remarkable breakthrough in devising a testable model that is able to replicate the abiogenesis process. The two basically solve the problem of how a lipid-coated protocell can divide into two displaying reproduction when the genetic material replicates. Recall in an earlier blog where I showed the hypothetical protocell reaction wherein a self-sustaining coservate droplet can use one or two basic reactions involving adenosine triphosphate, ATP, and adenosine diphosphate. So L times R plus ADP plus P, R plus L plus M plus ATP, ATP plus X times Y, ADP plus X times Y plus X times Y plus P. In the above, L times M in some large, indeterminate energy-rich compound that could serve as food. Whatever the specific form is conceived here to have two major parts capable of being broken to liberate energy. Compound R is perhaps a proteinoid or lipid-coated protocell, but in any case, able to act on L times M to decompose it. The problem with the early hypothesis was that such lipid-coated protocells lacked the machinery to allow for easy division. Kaneko and Kamamura solved this by taking their inspiration for their model from living things in which DNA and RNA code for proteins and the proteins catalyze replication of the genetic material. This goes back to biochemist Jacques Mondod's concept that the organism is a self-constructing machine. Its macroscopic structure is not imposed upon it by outside forces. Instead, it shapes itself autonomously by dint of constructive internal chemical interactions. Thus, in the Kaneko-Kimura model, one has a self-perpetuating system in which a cluster of two types of molecules catalyze replication for one another while also demonstrating rudimentary cell division. In the Kaneko-Kimura-Keke model, as with DNA, the genetic material replicates much more slowly than the other cluster molecules, but also takes longer to degrade, so it enables lots of the other molecule to accumulate. Following replication of the hereditary carrier, the copies drift apart while the molecules between them break down automatically, creating two separate entities. This is an exciting breakthrough, but some further investigations are needed, specifically ways to circumvent the problem that in real life membrane lipids around an RNA molecule don't typically catalyze RNA replication. However, this isn't insurmountable, because all one need do theoretically is replace the lipids with hydrophobic peptides. Basically, what the KK experience shows is that while abiogenesis hasn't been directly observed, it does provide a materialist model that can account for it in a peripheral way. Since such a materialist model exists, it means that all supernatural explanations become redundant. If one therefore continues to use them, he commits the fallacy of ignotum per ignotius. Thus, to claim abiogenesis has not been observed directly, which is partially true, and then to say this proves the creation story is something that would raise the eyebrows of a kindergartner. Indeed, it not only commits the fallacy of ignotum per ignotius, but also the fallacy of circular reasoning, since Answer and Genesis and Ham are claiming that which they must set out to prove independently. Even if nothing existed for abiogenesis, they would be obliged to prove supernatural creation. They can't use a naturalistic failure in their mind as positive evidence for their extraordinary claim. More importantly, the Answer in Genesis claim that abiogenesis breaks the law of biogenesis is simply dishonest. The law of biogenesis attributed to Louis Pasteur states that life cannot come from non-life, but Pasteur did not demonstrate that any such impossibility, only that it does not happen in everyday life. As shown in the KK model, it is at least possible that such can take place. Now add to that the Miller-Urey experiment. The Miller and Urey experiment basically applied an electrical discharge to a chemical brew resembling the Earth's primitive reducing atmosphere. This brew included ammonia and methane as well as hydrogen and water vapor. The effect of the discharge transformed the mix into a diverse yield of organic compounds. These included amino acids as well as substances such as formic acid and urea that normally occur in living organisms. The very fact so many organic compounds could arise is remarkable in itself, given the vast number of possible compounds that might have emerged. And while it is true that the discharge didn't produce actual living cells, there is no reason, given enough time, that a primitive prebiotic cell in the distant past could not have emerged, given the building blocks left behind. None of this was mentioned by Tyson, but it could have been and would likely have made the creationist crowd's head explode even more. Also, they have had to work much harder to come up with any kind of coherent response. But what is most galling about Answers in Genesis and Ham is the tacit assumption that their audience lacks basic scientific understanding, which gives Answers in Genesis permission to be fact-free. Hence, they can peddle any balderdash that violates logic or science with impunity. Meanwhile, Neil deGrasse Tyson gives viewers a naturalistic explanation for the world, and when he says science does not yet know something, this is not a sign of the failures of sciences, but instead a powerful example of the necessary honesty in which science thrives. The very fact that Answer in Genesis sees the words "I don't know" as a weakness shows a lens of intellectual dishonesty they're willing to go to pull the wool over the followers' eyes. Though again, Tyson also could have shown more support for abiogenesis, such as by invoking the Miller-Urey experiment, to make this less likely. Hence, one may also argue that Answers to Genesis exploit Cosmos' loose presentation and playing to a popular audience. Never mind the hysterical reaction from Answers in Genesis and Ham. After nearly every Cosmo episode shows a position of pure panic, Neil deGrasse Tyson has become their biggest public enemy because he gets primo airtime every Sunday on one of their conservatives' favorite channels. Up to now, these clods haven't come up with any series with similar gravitas that even Fox will accept to compete with Cosmos, and this drives them batshit crazy. Ham, who not long ago got his head handed to him by Bill Nye in a web debate, just can't accept that when he has is palatable bullcrap. What he has is palatable bullcrap, while Tyson offers actual science. In addition, Tyson makes science accessible to all people with an open mind, and he is likable and non-controversial to boot. True, Tyson does not identify himself as an atheist for obvious reasons, but it's clear to a blind man he is one. Also, it doesn't put our atheist noses out of joint, because it means he can reach across both sides of the aisle to a much greater degree than the late Chris Hitchens or Richard Dawkins. We atheists will take what we get, and if a naturalist universe can be delivered easily in bite-sized pieces by an affable showman like Neil Tyson, so much the better.